Hey everyone, welcome to the Ceres Podcast. On this episode, I'm joined by a good friend and long-time listener, Marcus French. Marcus was practically born into the fish and chip industry, taking the baton as the third generation in the family business to manage French's fish and chip shop in Wales next to sea. And now in his business, his daughter has also entered the business, so that makes her generation number 4. I've always been impressed by Marcus's story and his business, so it's an absolute pleasure to have him on. Today's episode is brought to you by the Ceres Natural Batter Mix. We're proud of the Ceres Natural Batter Mix because it's made us what we are today. Without the Natural Batter Mix, there would be no Ceres today. To give the Natural Batter Mix its great flavour and texture, we source 2 British flours from Kent, Essex and Hertfordshire, and 2 unique raisin agents. This gives us our signature finish. It's so British, we even source our plastic-free paper sacks from the UK. I'm not sure it could get any British than that. The natural batter mix is so simple, you just add the batter mix to cold water and mix, using either a machine or by hand. If you want to be a bit more adventurous, then you can mix carbonated water, beer or both. We have no seasoning added, so this allows you to add the seasoning of your choice. The natural batter mix has no hidden nasties, no artificial colourings, no artificial flavourings. It's just great the way it is. And it's perfect for all businesses, takeaways, restaurants, click and collect, delivery. The fact is it just keeps making great fish and chips time after time. In short, we love the natural batter mix, but don't just take our word for it. A verified review on our website from Charlie says it's a great product, very consistent, lots of lift. Switched this product 3 years ago and was complimented highly for my batter whilst being judged for National Fish and Chip Awards. I think that's a glowing review. To get your Ceres Natural Batter Mix, visit www.ceres.shop for next day free mainland UK delivery. You can also purchase from your favourite wholesaler, but if you do fancy giving it a try, then get in touch. If you want to keep in the loop with what we're doing at Ceres, then you should be following us on social media, but to get the information delivered directly to your inbox with special offers, then you need to be on our mailing list, and the link will be in the episode show notes. Be sure to share this podcast with your friends and with people in the industry, and if you like this episode, chances are they will like it too. So if you have a moment, leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. Now, let's dive into today's episode with Marcus French from French's Fish and Chips in Wales next to the sea. Hi Marcus, welcome to the Ceres Podcast.
Hi Ceres, how are you?
Not too bad, mate. Worth noting, long-time listener.
Yes. I listen. I haven't listened to all your podcasts, but
How dare you?
I have listened to quite a few.
I'm offended now. So, one notable story is when you messaged me once and you said, "Why were you talking so fast in this episode that you'd listened to?" And I was like, I always talk fast. And you were like, no, but this was really fast. And I was like, I don't know. So I listened back to it and it was normal. And I, for a whole day, just questioned myself. And I thought, I've got to talk slower because Marcus thinks I talk too fast. And then it turns out that you had it on ×2.
I didn't even know I could do it on ×2. It just seemed to happen. I don't know why.
Yeah, turns out Mark Petru also listens to all the podcasts in ×2. So when I meet him in person, he actually thinks I'm just really dozy now, just talk really slow.
So you don't really talk like Mickey Mouse, or
you would do, wouldn't you, at that level? No, I don't really talk like that. No, but I can imagine how people probably think I do, so, especially if they've got it on ×2. But I guess it just shows people want to get to the end pretty fast. So one thing I wanted to ask you before we got started is how often does a car get stuck in the quay?
It's not that often, actually. They did put up posters yesterday saying that it's going to be high tide, but yesterday one of them didn't take his Mini out of the way in time, and that got quite flooded.
Like, how fast does that sort of thing? Like, how fast does it go from, low tide to high tide?
Well, this one was a bit of a tidal surge, so it's a bit more. It doesn't usually come over the car park more than about sort of 5 or 6 times a year. But this one was that was a nice day, and there was lots of people there, and that was lots of people watching it, so that was good for the business.
Oh, okay.
But they had one just along both sides of us, so one at Brancaster and one at Blakeney as well. So we're not the only ones who had one car stuck in the car park.
Makes you wonder, were they there, or did they miss the whole warning thing, or did they park it and then go out somewhere else the day, or were they in one of the other shops, or just hovering around, or?
I saw the police going in and they were checking to make sure there's nothing inside, but I think by the time the owner had come back, that was too late to get in and move it. You have to wait for the tide to go out before it's moved. But the good thing, it's gone today, so I don't know if I would have thought a removal lorry probably came and took it away, because I don't think I'll be able to move under his own steam by the amount of salt water that got into the engine.
No, that could be a write-off for a car like that, really, because salt water just kills everything.
Yeah, the windscreen wipers are going across, which I don't realise why, but probably must have got shorted by the earth, by the water or something. But and the car alarm was going off quite a lot.
I almost feel sorry for him, but at the same time, it makes me laugh too. Like, it's really harsh. But I'm sort of torn between, feeling bad, and then I think I'd laugh at myself if I'd done that as well. I think I'd be annoyed. Don't get me wrong, but I think I'd just give in and be like, "What an idiot I am." I think.
Yeah, I just hope that the insurance pays full for it, because it would be quite expensive, and all the interior would take a long while to dry out, I think.
Yeah, have to put a humidifier in there. We've got two in our warehouse. I can lend them one. So we met digitally. This is quite a long while ago when Mark Petrus set up Chippy Chat online forum, before it was a magazine, and so on and so on. And I was always fascinated by your story. And if I'm right, you're third generation fish fryer?
Yeah. My grandfather, my father, my uncle, then me, and now my daughter's taken over, so she'll be the fourth.
So tell us a little bit about Frenchies and how Frenchies came about.
My grandfather came from Tamworth, and he came down here with the yeomanry to do training, and he met my grandmother. And he said if he ever get through the First World War, that he'd come back to marry her. And he managed to get through the First World War. He was gassed and some other things, he said. And he came back to try and make a business. And they got married. They couldn't make it pay, or couldn't find a job. But then her father lent them some money, and they opened the first fish and chip shop in 1921. And then the present fish and chip shop came up for sale, and they bought that in 1925. So next year should be 100 years in this shop. We have been in business over 100 years, but we'll have to have some sort of celebration for this shop being 100 years old.
There's a lot to celebrate there, because that is a long history in the industry for sure, and obviously in Wales.
Yeah, I don't know what to do. I don't really want to do fish and chips for 1p or what it was in them days.
Yeah,
for obvious reasons. Maybe only the first so many, but that disappoint quite a lot. We'd have to have some sort of celebration somehow going on.
Yeah, no, definitely. I don't know. We'd have to rack our brains to see what you could do. There's a lot of good things, but half a penny fish and chips just sounds horrendous for you anyway. Sounds great for the customers, but there's definitely something you could do there to raise some money for charity as well. I think locally, always something.
We have done lots of things for the lifeboat. We have had a new Shannon lifeboat delivered last year, which Wells did. They actually raised quite a lot of the money towards it, but it's an awful lot of money once you take in consideration the whole new shed, tractors, trailers, the inshore boat, and another little tractor for that, and then all the training. It's an awful lot of money. So, we did do 2 or 3 dinners, which we gave free of charge to help with that. But, we have to do something. I don't know what. But we did do scratch cards before, where you get a scratch card, you can win things. But I've still got some of the scratch cards left from 4 years ago.
Do they still scratch?
No, they aren't scratched. They're unscratched. But I thought I'd put a time limit on because I thought 5 years later someone said I've still got this scratch card, so I thought I'd put time limit. So now they're all out of date. So
Yeah, my friend used to have do like the coupon cards where you come in like 5-6 times, whatever, and he'd change them every year on purpose because then you'd have a fresh one. And he said like 7 years later, someone come in finally with a completed one, and he was just like, so that's like less than one visit a year, but they're coming on the 7th year to get their free one. I was just like, mate, that's like customers, eh? Sometimes you might say to yourself, that's not a great deal, when as actually that they've kept through with it. I remember a few years ago, Marcus, I went to a shop and it made me laugh, and it was a very busy shop, and they did buy 30 fish and chips. So already we're into the 30s. That's like a month's worth, and you get a free small pot of mushy peas.
he's a careful owner.
Yeah. Well, in fairness, he did not need to do any special offers. None. It was a very busy site. But yeah, he did. He did do it, and he did say customers did redeem them too. So that tells you something, doesn't it? So,
Yeah.
So looking back on the founders, what was your grandfather's name?
William Thomas. Yes, William.
So, what do you think was different back then? Like, what was Wells like in 1921 when he's setting up a fish and chip shop? Because it isn't like it is today, I would imagine. It wasn't, shall I say?
It was quite hard. I think I was told that people who came back from the war, nobody wanted to employ them. So when anybody went for jobs, they said, yes, anybody, but nobody has been in the army.
Why is that?
So I think they thought they may have train killers. I don't know.
No.
But they usually, they said it was very hard and not many people want to employ the people who were then, I was told. So they had to make their own jobs. They were selling wet fish or selling prawns or crabs or things door to door even, or just working on the boats, anything that was a crane. So it was quite a hard life, I was told. My father, there was lots of fish and chip shops about that time, so it's sort of a prime time for fish and chips.
Yeah.
So yes, he did enjoy starting up a business, and it was a lot harder then. Portion of the chips was about a 2.5 portion of, a little greaseproof bag. I was told about 2.5 to 3 ounces of chips and about a 2-ounce piece of fish, and that was the norm. So that's a lot of different todays, where we're probably 7 or 8 times the size of the portions than they were in them days.
Yeah, but I would imagine back then as well, I'd imagine it wasn't always cod and haddock. It was whatever white fish they could probably get their hands on.
Yeah, I think so. I don't really know. I've seen cod, and there was herring and stuff like that caught in the local. So I don't really know what the fish were, but I would have thought that'd been a white fish. I don't know. It could have been whiting, could have been pollock, could have been anything.
Yeah. So do you think that? It would have been? Obviously, the trading area would have been different as well. Like, what was Wells reliant on back then? Was it a fishing town? Was there other industry?
Yeah, we used to have lots of trawlers and boats come in. So they used to have lots of quayside. Used to unload caught fish meal and stuff like that. They've unloaded everything here, from coal to potatoes in the past.
Yeah,
and they came in, and of course in the First World War, there'd have probably still been sailing ships as well.
Yeah,
they did have a little tug here, which a paddle steamer, which towed them in sometimes when there's not very much wind. It was a busy little port, and that was one of the busiest ones. And of course, we had a railway then as well, so we actually could get fish in from Lowestoft and places like that, and also things could be transported backwards and forwards. And the town was more different because the high street used to be the busy area of the town, and then later on, as things got down, the actual quayside became more popular. So the actual street moved from one place to the other, which would be nearer the quayside rather than nearer the railway station.
Yeah. And then, so I guess they would have gone through some tough times, especially if there was also lots of fish and chip shops in the area. But because now there isn't actually that many fish and chip shops in Wales, is there? in
No,
comparison?
in my lifetime, there's been about 4 or 5 fish and chip shops. It's down to just the two, and we're only about one door apart, actually, so
Yeah.
we're quite close together.
You can wave to each other.
Yeah, we're both on the quayside, facing the sea, and I think that's the prime position. And like everybody says, position, position, position. And people come here, look at the sea, think we have fish and chips, and fish and chips always taste better just looking at the sea and smelling the salt air. And it's not just good fish and chips, but where you are at the time, and you appreciate it more, I think.
Yeah, I think you're right. So your dad then joins the business, I guess, and your uncle you mentioned. So what do you think it was like for them working for their dad at the time? Like, do you think was there an open-minded spirit? Was your granddad quite open to change, or would it have been very much like, guys, we do it this way and this way only?
When my father and uncle got to the age of sort of 1920, that was the time when the Second World War came about.
Yeah.
So they both went in. My father went into the army, and my uncle went into the RAF. Had a story there that they had the church rooms. They had people coming on the Friday and the Saturday to sign up for the army. And my uncle said to a local farmer, "Do you want to come with me to go and get some dripping?" Because they couldn't get any dripping. That was quite sought after. And he said, "Well, we're going to go and sign up for the army." And he said, "Well, they're here the Saturday as well. We'll go over to get the dripping, and then we'll both go and sign up on the Saturday night." And so they came back, then went down the Saturday night. They weren't there, and they said they got so many volunteers on the Friday night that they didn't bother turning up on the Saturday night. And from that, I think my uncle joined the RAF instead, and it probably saved his life, because a lot of the ones who were there were the ones who went on the landings of the first ones across. And so,
Wow.
Yeah, at the start of the Second World War.
Wow. It's interesting, isn't it? Because your family's marked by two lots of predecessors in 2 generations that have been at war. Like, how does that frame the way you think about things? Like, because obviously your granddad went to World War One, your uncle and dad went to World War Two, and then came back from that. Like, how does that what does that do to your outlook to some degree?
Makes me thankful it hasn't been a world war in my time.
Yeah.
Or a world war which actually UK has actually participated in, rather than just sort of conflicts. I think we've had one of the longest times of wars in that time, and I think it's been a good time for us at the moment. So I feel very pleased, and I think that has grown on year, and so it's getting even busier each time. So yes, rather than actually going to war, I've actually tried to build the business up, and I think it's a lot more for it as well. I think it's fish and chips in Wales is quite something which people recognise and come to Wales as one of the attractions besides the beach and the seaside and the water.
Did you ever catch your granddad? Did you see a lot of him when you were younger, or was that not a thing at all? Was he already gone by the time you grew up?
No, I do remember my grandfather. I used to come down and used to make batter and carry down baskets of potatoes for the chips.
So they put you to work then?
Yeah, they put me to work. I used to make the batter. I remember when I was sort of 7 years of age making the batter, and they tell me I was quite good at making batter. And we still make the batter similar to in them days. Although we have discussed this before, where the colourings changed a lot. Where we used to use cochineal to make the sort of orangey colour, and then when I talked to you when you came down sometimes, and we changed it to, I think that was first we went to beta carotene. No, not beta carotene. We went to tartazine sunset yellow, and then I went to beta carotene. Sorry.
Yeah.
You told me how that was a good E number, and beta carotene is the way to go.
Well, it's a thing that a lot of people just now think that all E numbers are bad. And they're not. They just mean that they're tested and they're generally recognised as safe. And then you've got 1 to 5, 1 being good and hopefully green, and 5 being not so good, and that'll be red on the scale. But I remember like early on talking to you about numbers. I remember even before I set up the batter company back then, you were always sort of like trying to figure out the best thing for your business, even back then. And I guess because you'd already spent a lot of time thinking about things in some ways, because you'd been in the industry for so long.
Well, I didn't realise how batter worked. Just think you put the fish in it and it comes out. But when you talk to it, and Mark Matrew says that it's an amalgamation of things, it's not actually a liquid. And when you put the batter in the fish, the fish in the batter and then put it in the oil, then the fish is totally encapsulated in it, and actually the fish is steamed in the water, what's in the fish. And then it cooks so that you don't get any oil into the fish, or hardly any oil in the fish. And so it's quite a healthy product. And that is true. So if you do fish and chips properly and take the batter off and just eat the fish, it's very healthy. But it's very hard not to eat the batter, I think.
I enjoy the batter, and I enjoy the fish. I think the key thing, one thing we learned early on in development, is that you've got to, the oil and water transfer needs to happen almost exactly the same time. If for whatever reason they're mismatched, you're going to get either a really dry piece of fish, and when I say fish, I mean fish with batter, or a really oily piece of fish. So that's one thing we learned early on, is that the balance of raising agents is really important, because you don't want to get it wrong. And nobody wants an oily piece of fish, or a watery piece of fish, or even a dry piece of fish. So yeah, it's there's always a lot in it. Did you ever want to do anything else before joining the family business, Marcus?
Yeah, I wanted to go into science. I was very interested in science, and I went to a college and I did A levels. I did biology, physics, and chemistry in A levels. But I think I got slightly distracted by the pub sometimes, and I didn't get quite good grades as I was anticipating. So back into the family business, really. So I weren't anticipating it, but went in, and I'd always worked in there during the holidays as well. Everybody goes in and helps out, and that's what happened. So yes, and towards the end, I thought I was good at frying and serving. And in them days, we had wet fish as well, so I used to be able to fillet fish and skin skate. We used to sell things in pecks and bushels.
Wow.
Whelks and mussels and cockles and things. And big wooden containers which you put stuff in, and samphire and things like that. So, but towards later on, I decided that that was quite early in the mornings, getting up to do the wet fish, and then also, especially during the summer times, you're working hard until by the time I cashed up, closed at 10:30, and then clearing up and then cashing up. I didn't finish until midnight sometimes, and then getting up early again for the wet fish was quite hard. So we decided to separate it, and fish and chips is more profitable than the wet fish. So we put the wet fish into a different shop we'd bought and carried on with the wet fish and chips.
Yeah, it makes sense. So again, you sort of just split it up, and you see. And have you ever tried anything else over the years? Obviously, if you did wet fish in the first place, was there anything else that you'd tried alongside fish and chips?
Not recently. I have bought other properties, and I did buy a restaurant, and I rented it out to start with, then took it back, and I got my cousin. He ran the restaurant for a while. It was quite successful, but didn't make very much profit. And then sold it to another person. He didn't want to carry on, so leased it out really, and now sold it on. But I think it's more better to have one good fish and chip shop and run that than it is to have 2 or 3 other shops which are smaller ones. Although it may not be quite as hard to do so, but one big one is still quite hard to do, especially since it's a seaside one. Trying to get staffing, you have to have staff through the winter, which is quite quiet, and then in the summer you want lots of staff, and you've got to try and retain staff and get new staff as well, and that's always a problem, especially in the last couple of years, getting staff.
Is it hard
also managing the cash flow and everything in the sort of off-peak months as well? Because I'd imagine you've got to be quite lean over those months.
I'm not that great at cash flows and stuff. We make more money in the summer and we actually lose money in the winter. So keeping the staff on is one of the considerations, and we try and do other things as well. But I realise that this is the way forward, and the business has actually grown, and so it can afford to do this.
Yeah.
And if we do any changes, that will be in the winter time. But the summer does counteract for the winter as well. So that is sort of like one of the things we take on board.
Yeah, makes sense. Well, you wouldn't be doing it otherwise, especially for this long. And would you say that the pattern was very similar even in the olden days, like when your parents had it or your uncle and your dad had it? And before that, was it a very similar, busy in the summer, quiet in the winter? Or has that exaggerated over the years?
No, it's strange because years ago the population of the town was over 4,000 and now the population's just over 2,000, so it's actually got smaller. But the town's changed because now we've got a lot more second homeowners and holiday houses, and there's not much business here, so people who the youngsters haven't got jobs to go to, so they usually move away, and the people who move here are the ones who are retiring and they haven't got any children, so there's nobody to employ really. It has had a knock-on effect with the school as well, where the actual number of pupils was going down at one stage, but now it's built right up and it's more than when I was at the school, so it has changed again. Some people are coming in from far away as Hunstanton to get to Wells. But Wells has grown busier, and the actual businesses in Wells have got busier over the years. So yes, when my father and uncle were there, that wasn't so busy in them days, and that was more locals. Mm-hmm. But now it has grown, and year on year, and it's busy, and it's busy as ever been, really.
Yeah. What have you tried to do to sort of help more when it's a bit more in the leaner times? Have you tried to drum up the turnover a little bit in the winter?
Yeah, we do special offers and do loyalty cards and things, but being on the winter, it's all dependent on the weather, really. And if it's a lovely day, you get day trippers and people come to the Wells and go down to the beach. But if it's raining, even in the summertime, it's quite quiet. So you get the staff there ready and think, well, we're going to be a really busy day, and it's pouring around. And another day you think that it's not going to be as busy, and the sunshine comes out and you're packed. And it's quite hard to anticipate. But if you go back over the years, you think, well, this day was busy. You can calculate what it's going to be like.
Yeah.
But you just got to be careful. On certain days, you still get caught out.
No, of course. I read an article yesterday, and it said how it was about how they feel that the British vacation has come to an end. That people post-COVID, they've now started to go back abroad, and they see that as a holiday again. And I wondered how that's going to affect British tourism, because I think for a few years, B&Bs were full, hotels were full, all the restaurants were busy, all the fish and chip shops were busy. So I wonder how that works now. Are you seeing anything against that, or is it still a bit early?
It's getting a lot more harder to make a profit in hospitality now. Pubs and cafes are finding it a bit more difficult, especially with wages rising and people having to pay more money for the staffing. When I've talked to other places now, there seems to be more money now in accommodation. So hotels and B&Bs and anybody where they've got accommodation, they make more money now, and there seems to be hotels and pubs are now sort of doing accommodation because they say that's where the money is. Just getting cleaners and doing the bed and breakfast bit, and rather than actually selling them food.
I wonder if that bubble is about to burst, though, because this article said yesterday, and I'll put it online so people can see it, but a few people it said that one area in particular was Scarborough, and in Scarborough there was 200 Airbnb hosts, let's say, and now there's 1,000. And they're saying that it's literally, there's just not enough customers. So the market is dropping down fast. So I wonder if that bubble has burst, because if there's 1,000 and let's say there was barely enough customers for 200 before, that means that everyone's going to be on a race to the bottom, aren't they?
Yeah, in Wales there used to be over 100 B&Bs, and after COVID, I think there's one now. I think
Oh wow!
All of them have gone on to self-catering, and they didn't want to have the people in the houses. And I think people would rather have self-catering and have their own area and space. So that has changed completely. But I think we're out in the sticks in Wales. We're right out on the coast. We haven't got any motorways here. It's still quite laid back. The town itself and the area hasn't changed completely. I mean, lots of people like to come here and go crab fishing and sailing and canoeing and stuff like that. So the water's still a pull for the people, and the pine woods and the beach here is still very popular. And people love to bring the dogs down there. There's so many more people now with dogs. So we still don't have dogs in our shop because there's only a smallish place, but nearly every place you go to now is dog friendly, and they sort of give out dog biscuits and try and encourage people to come into the shops with the dogs. It just shows what people come here now, even accommodations, they want to have their pets to come with them.
I think the whole dog owner thing has changed. I think a while ago, dogs would have been, let's say, on the dirtier side, maybe. Whereas now, dogs live in the houses. They might be a bit dirty. Have been for a walk down the beach, but for the most part, dogs are well kept and clean, and hopefully they're not yappy dogs. So you can see why people have them in restaurants now, but it does seem like they are everywhere. Like I see them everywhere I go now, and they just sit quietly. We went to our local coffee shop not long ago, and it said, "Oh, you're allowed to bring dogs in." My nephew's dog is this huge Rottweiler, like huge. I reckon he's like half horse. So we take him in, and I think everyone's face just looks over to him because he looks aggressive, although he's not. And we go in, and I'm just like, maybe just put him over there because he's huge. So we sit him in the corner, and he got a bit excited when they brought over something, and I think they did bring him a treat over, and he sort of jumped up without not jump, just sort of stood up really. But because he's so big, he hits the coffee table, and everything just goes flying. I'm like, we have to go sit outside. We can't do this. But you can see how all the little dogs just get on really fine. But when you've got like a dog that's half horse, it's going to be a problem. So one thing I was wondering when writing some notes on this, Marcus, is what was it like for you? Give me a little bit about what it was like. You entered the fish and chip business, and you said it was your dad and your uncle working at the time. What was it like working in that environment?
You expect it because you're part of the family, so your holidays there, and it's quite harder because most people are going out at nights and enjoying themselves and going to the pubs and stuff, and you've got to work. And that carried on even when my father and uncle both weren't in the business. My father, both of them died within about 3 years of each other. And you're working most nights. You can't go to weddings. You can't go to parties. Especially in the summertime, you're working 7 days a week and quite late nights. And I look back now, I don't know how we brought up our children. I don't understand it. But you're in that situation yourself now.
Yeah.
But it's very hard, and I'm looking after my grandchildren a lot more now as well because my daughter's come in the business, and so you do rely on your parents to look after the children while you carry on doing the business, and that's how it was. And looking back on it, I never really looked forward to the summers because you know you're going to be really, really busy. And you think, oh no, it's going to be the summer now, and I can't go anywhere, and you can't make any plans. And I did get to the stage, especially towards the latter part of it. Later on, I think, oh no, it's another summer. It's now coming up, and you're going to be, it's going to be really, really hard work, and you're not going to do anything. The 6 weeks of the summer, where the school holidays, that is flat out, and it's, you have to do it. And I think if I look back on it later, I would have thought I'd really needed another manager, or rather me being there all the time and doing it. I should have got somebody else to do some of the jobs, and I should have, gave them the jobs to do. And I think I'm too more hands-on. I'd rather do it myself rather than ask somebody to do it. And that's a lot of the time. And rather than actually delegate more, I would think that'd be the one thing I would sort of said to myself if I went back in time and said, delegate more.
Yeah.
Somebody once said to me, said, the first thing you do when you get a job is find somebody to take over your job so you can move up and do the next job. And probably should have took more notice of that at the time.
Yeah, no, it's true. I guess, but in the moment, you probably don't think of those things. You're too busy at the coalface, I guess. And, sometimes you just wish you could stand back and be more business-like, let's say, if we're going to use that term. But, I guess when you're in the moment, though, you just think, I've got to get this thing done,
Well, we're family businesses. People come and see you as well as the product, really. So you can say hello to them as they come along. But we, like you, we actually now have got an island range, so the friers are actually a bit further away from the customers. I think I remember you talking, you saying your father missed when he had an island range that he couldn't actually speak to the customers at one time. But it's easier because you can cook at one side and serve the other side, and so in a fast restaurant it's a lot better. But you don't have so much contact with the customers yourselves. You can sort of shout at them and say hello and how are you, but you can't have a full conversation because it's quite noisy in there in the first place, and so you are a bit more detached from your customers.
Yeah, and I guess you have your name above the door, similar to my dad does, and that also creates an attachment for people because they come to some degree because they know it's owned by the French family. Like, people have probably built it into their routine. We're going to Wales and we're going here for fish and chips because we know these people. And even the locals, you've been there for 100 odd years. Not you personally, but the family. So to some degree, there is an attachment there. And so if you're not there sometimes, you're always going to get people say, well, I came in the other day and you weren't there. And you're like, well, sorry, I just wanted a day off. Like, and it probably was absolutely fine. But yeah, I guess some people just, they attach themselves to that name, don't they?
Yeah. In times gone by, locals and friends used to come to the back door and used to get served at the back door, and used to then have a queue out the back door as a queue in the front as well. So they sort of try and bypass the larger queue. And we used to take telephone orders and orders like that. But recently, since COVID, we've gone on to click and collect, so that people have to pay that there, and so we don't get so many people in the back door. There's still one or two who do come in the back, but not very often. So you still can see the local people and people and friends, but majority of it now is click and collect or queuing, and I think it's a lot easier than having to have two places served from than one. But although you do lose the attachment to your customers and especially certain people, so but that I'm not there that now, so. I do more upstairs and paying the bills and repairs and renewals and stuff like that, and leave the serving now to my daughter and the staff down there.
So you've become a facilities manager.
Similar to that, it seems. It's nice to just still do things, isn't it? It's nice to come down and do the bits you like, and you can pick and choose a bit more what you want to do.
Yeah.
Trying to do it during the babysitting, but during the.
Yeah, that makes sense. And like I said to you the other day by text, the good thing is when you're babysitting is that you can give the kids back, which you probably couldn't do when they were your kids. So one of the things I was thinking, obviously, we've all been through COVID together, so that has taught us all a thing or two. And your granddad, let's say, was running the business when his sons went to World War II, which must have been a very intense situation for him and your grandma, I'd imagine. And obviously then over World War II, although fish and chips itself wasn't rationed, the ingredients to make fish and chips were rationed and coal was rationed. What other challenges do you think there's been in between those two? So if we bookend those two situations in the middle, what do you think? Is there any other difficult situations that there've been over the years for Frenchies?
Well, there's been the floods. We do get flooded on the quayside here, sort of average every 25 years. So we had the 53 flood, then the 78 flood, and then we had a flood in 2013. 78, I was at college at the time, but it was quite a big very big tide and did damage to the bank, the quaysides, and we had a boat, loads of boats all over on the quayside, smashed into windows and stuff like that. And the 2013, which is a bit different, the 53 flood was a long time ago, and I can't remember, but I've seen lots of pictures and there's lots of damage. The 78 flood, it was the banks had gone, and actually it was good that the banks went. That took a lot of the water away from the front, actually, so it went across all the fields. So that you could see the water dropped completely at the time. 2013 was completely different. That was similar to what yesterday happened, where the tide came in, but it just didn't stop coming in. It just kept on coming. So the inside, well, at the shop door, about 3 feet at the front door. We've tried to keep it out with bags and sandbags and stuff. We've since got flood boards now, but water was still seeping in, and that was a real sort of family thing. There was all the family there with squeegee mops as the water was coming in, push it to the back of the shop and down the drain and going out again. And luckily the drain was still taking it then, so water was coming in and going out. And it was quite frightening that that was quite high, but within about 2 hours the water had dropped and gone away, and we'd cleared all the water out and wiped all the things down by the next morning, and everything was clean and dry, and we was all right. I had stainless steel on the walls, so that was quite good. So we were ready and fine, but all the electricity had gone, and so we couldn't open for a week because the electricity had been cut off, and then we needed 3-phase for our range, and what they had done, they'd spliced one of the phases into another phase, so it wasn't true 3-phase electricity, and so they said, don't turn your range on, because if you haven't got true 3-phase, that may do damage. So we couldn't open, even though we'd done all the work and everything was done, but we just couldn't because we didn't have the electricity. But we had in all the floods, you have lots of people come down to see it all. So if you could have opened, there'd been a lot of people to serve, if you know what I mean.
It's weird. It's weird how that brings people out, because you'd imagine the opposite would be recommended, like stay in and be safe, and yet human creatures, we want to go out and actually see, oh, what happened there. Strange, isn't it?
We were busy last night, actually, because the flood came in and loads of people came down to see it, and even though that one car was sat there I would have thought there had been nearly 200 people here stood there watching the tide and watching the car and talking. And so from things, somebody's misfortune, we were a bit busier, and people come down to look at it all.
Maybe every other year you should just, you and the next door neighbour chip in and just throw a car in the water so everyone turns up. Just you probably get your money back.
I think we have to vary it a bit sometimes. Yeah. We have a big boat in here called the Albatross, which is a flat-bottomed. I think it was 1900 that was built, and that got stuck one year, and they had big winches and boats coming in to pull it off. And when they came down, that was busier than a summer's day. Everybody was sitting down the bank watching it all being in action, and so it's been good to get them stuck once a year just to build up the customer base.
Yeah. No, exactly. One of the other things I remember us talking about a long time ago is how you've had like a lot of ranges over the years, frying ranges, and now you're on modern frying ranges. And I remember like just thinking, there's a lot of things that you carry doing in your business, you carry with you because you've been doing it for so long. So how do you balance the need for innovation and doing modern things, and then also the fact that you have been in business for nearly 100 years, because you don't want to let go of all those things that you've learned or maybe carried through from the last generations?
Yeah. Well, we had a Frank Ford range when my grandfather was. That's the earliest range I can remember. Although we did, of course, have coal-fired ranges before then, but I cannot remember them ones. Then we had a fire, and the only one we could get was a Preston and Thomas. So we had a 3-pan Preston Thomas range, and that was quite good. So when that came towards the end of that one, we decided we'd have another Preston and Thomas range. And that was very worked hard. And the first thing when I took over, I thought I'd have another Preston Thomas because they was said to be the best rangers, and go to Cardiff and go and see Keith Preston and Tudor Thomas, and look around the whole factory and see how they're all made, all traditionally made in mild steel. It was quite interesting, and yeah, I did like enjoying looking around there. And in one part of it, I said, "What's happened over there?" And they said, "Well, we don't like that area." And they were making tinned areas where for people who were Italians mainly, who had died, and they put the coffins in these metal boxes so they can be transported home, so they can be buried at home. And Preston Thomas did that as part, and they said they didn't make any profit at it; they just did it as a service.
Oh wow!
But that's what they used to make up there. But yeah, the Preston Thomas were good, and supposed to be the Rolls Royce of the time. But I don't think towards the end, they just didn't keep up with the development. And I think that I personally think that the Dutch Rangers are better. Although the British Rangers are now coming up, are just nearly as good. But we went with the Florigo this is our third Florigo, I think we've got now. And mainly because Rob Furry, he thinks outside the box. And we wanted have more capacity, and he actually gave us a U-shaped range last time, not the present one, but the last one. So we actually went round in a U-shape. So we had chips on one side, fish on the other, and served at the front. And no other manufacturer could do that sort of thing. And so he was very good at that sort of thing and thinking things through.
Mm. Yeah, no, definitely. One thing that makes me think, I remember seeing some old paperwork, or at least there were adverts from back then, from the old Federation magazines. And I always wondered before that why Preston and Thomas had such a big name, let's say. I don't think there's a range manufacturer out there today that has the name that they had, that they carried, because they were market leaders for a very long time. But there was also a lot of other range manufacturers who also did a very good job. And I think what Preston and Thomas did really well is sell the story. I look, a lot. Remember the old adverts? There was a lot of writing. There were adverts in the olden days were very text heavy, weren't they? But they did sell the story. The image of what it would be like owning one of these things. So it would be. What was it like having one of these delivered new back then?
We had our range had a long straight range at one time, so it was sort of all the way through the shop. This goes back to the VAT situation, because when I was younger, the seaside towns used to be able to open so many Sundays a year, and that used to be one of the busiest days of the week because all the other shops are closed. But then they brought in the VAT that if you sat down, you had to pay VAT. So our family decided to take all the seating area out, and so it was just all takeaway, and therefore you didn't have to charge VAT. But then they changed it all again, and then all hot food had to have VAT. So then we had sitting, tables and chairs put back in again so that people could sit down. So we went with the VAT, so everybody was a restaurant really. And from being a restaurant, therefore, all fish and chip shops could open all year round, so we didn't have an advantage being at the seaside over other shops at that time. The range, by then I decided to have the range across the shop rather than all the way down, and therefore I couldn't have a long range, so that's when we tried to have an L-shape or a U-shaped one. But yeah, Preston and Thomas were really good. I had one range which had photoelectric eyes, and so when the pilot was like there, they could see that there was a flame, and it kept it light. And then when the flame went out, the photoelectric eye could not see the flame, so it used to cut it out. But that wasn't very good because if the wind blew and flew the flame to the left or the right, they used to cut the range down. It used to happen all the time. So I had it retrospectively fitted back with the older ones with the sort of bimetallic strips in, so that so they did try things, I think, but they just kept to the radial heat system. towards the end, which is tried and tested. And there's still a lot of ranges of them about now. They still look the same, don't they? There's lots of the old Preston type with the roll top lids and the things.
Yeah, and I worked with them for a while, and before we then changed ranges. If I'm honest, my dad put his in. I was born in May 1984. He put it in July 1984, and I think he took it out when I was 20. He didn't want it. He'd never wanted it gone. Like, he would have kept on frying on that. He'll have it now if it was up to him. But no, once he did change over, back then he moved to a Kremko, and now they've got Kremkos and Florigos. But he now would never have something old like that. And well, he's retired, but I think the key thing is that I remember, like, he did call Preston and Thomas just before we bought the first Kremko. Sorry, he called them and they came to see us, and he was like, "Show us what's new." He really wanted a reason to buy it, like, and there was just nothing there. Like, and it was a shame because you could tell that if they'd probably given him 2 or 3 things, he would have cut them a check straight away. Like, but there was just nothing new. So I think what probably happened is that people had no reason to change. If you've still got a 30-year-old, 40-year-old firing range today, for example, your Florigo, if you've had it 20 years and there was absolutely no reason to change it because it looked exactly the same and had no new technology, would you buy a new one? You'd just say, well, I might as well just stay as I am, thanks. So I think that's what probably. I wonder if it's true what they say, which is they were their own worst enemy. They put themselves out of business to some degree. But I actually think the research, the Dutch came so strong and fast that with their technology that maybe it was just both things.
I did really like the Preston Thomases. They had the ones with the handle. You used to move it with your knee, put it up and put it down, and you had to be more. Think advanced to what you're going to put in, because then you used to put chips in, then you put fish and chips, and the chips used to clean the pan as you've gone along. And so you had to know the fryer had to be a lot more professional or knew what they were doing a lot more. When we come with the newer ranges like the Florigos, that isn't the same. You can actually, the temperature comes up quite straight away. Nowadays, you put chips in one pan and fish in another pan. The other days, you used to sort of cascade the oils and cascade the chips, so you have chips in one and then put the fish to alternate to try and clean the fish the range as you went. And you had to think more of ahead. And of course, you had to have filtration towards the latter part, which you filtered it all out and put it back in again. I always found Preston and Thomas really good, and if I had any problems, I always used to phone up Preston and Thomas, and I used to ask for George Ramsey, who used to be their foreman, and he used to answer all my questions. You had anybody else, they never knew what they're doing. But when George left, I think that's when it started going down. I think George Ramsey grandson was a football player, played for Arsenal, Aaron Ramsey, and he went to be his manager, I think, or something like that. So, yeah, after that, I know Simon carried on afterwards, but I don't think the range was as good. And then the Dutch rangers seem to be more intelligent, because you can just put fish in and chips in, and they used to bring up the temperature. Even if you only put a small handful of chips in, they used to just cook them. They never used to come in full power. It used to just come slightly, so it cooks them nicely. Whereas you did that with another pan, it'd either be all power or no power. So it used to be chips. If you only put a smaller pan of chips in, you used to have to keep a watch them. Otherwise, they'd burn quite easily.
Yeah, no, it's true. And I think that the pans on British ranges were thicker, so it took a lot more for the energy to get through. But once it was there, you could just keep knocking out product very quickly. Whereas I do think with the Dutch pans, they're thinner. I think I might not be right, but I think they're 5 mil, and I think the British pans were 9 mil. But it's interesting because obviously, I think if you look back, everyone's got this nostalgic feeling of how those fryers were better. Actually, they were probably just great for the time, just as what we've got now is great for the time. But I'd imagine today's technology is a lot better than yesterday's technology, because that's what happens with technology. And one thing that I remember that was different as well is that electric frying ranges on the old British, you'd have to have the elements underneath heating up the metal. And it's only when I saw the Dutch ones where actually the elements are inside the pattern. You think, so simple. Why has no one figured this out? Like, and it just made complete sense to me that sometimes you just need a fresh set of eyes on something. And that's what probably Preston Thomas didn't ever have.
I think Preston Thomas tried. I think it all came back with the high efficiency. Because as the gas got more expensive, Preston Thomas were very inefficient. The more gas you used to put in, they used to heat it up, and you want more faster cooking, so the gas used to use a lot. And then when they brought out high efficiency ranges, which measures the gas and the air mixture has to be a certain rate so that there's less than 5% wastage coming out, which is not unburned gas. They had to get that right, and I think that's where Preston Thomas could never get that completely right, especially on the LPG. And I was told they had to have all the ranges, LPG, gas, and methane, all had to be the same. So they had to get them all right, not just the certain ones. But they said they even employed the actual person who did it just to try and get it through. But I think they brought out they named it something different instead of high efficiency towards the end, I think. And I can't remember what it was, and they said it's their own brand. But I think from then on, that's when Preston Thomas sort of started going down, and the new Rangers and the Dutch Rangers started coming in.
Yeah, no, definitely, 100%. It's interesting. I always look back at those things, and they just make me think. It's a bit like it's a little bit like Kodak. Did you ever hear about the story about Kodak and how they had the technology to do digital cameras but didn't use it, and then the business now look at Kodak. Where's Kodak? It's gone. And they had such a stranglehold on an industry, which was photography, and now no one even thinks of Kodak ever. And I think to some degree, Preston and Thomas was the same, and a lot of British frying ranges, to be honest, not just, Preston and Thomas, but it is nice to see some of them coming back. But yeah, but honestly, I'm convinced, if I'm honest though, Marcus, I don't know how you feel about this. I'm convinced that 95% of shops that have traditional frying ranges that are pretty old, I don't mean new ones, I'm pretty convinced that they're uninsured, if I'm honest. Because when you look at all of the modern technology that these new frying ranges have, and you see that how insurance companies will find them the littlest thing to not pay out something, I would imagine that having an old frying range that's probably 30 years old, 20 years old, there's so many liabilities there that you're just not aware of, if I'm honest. You see it every other week in the fish and chip groups. Oh, my insurance said this. They're not paying for that. They're not paying for this. So, another thing, that I've been seeing a lot lately is ducting. Where people are having their ducting cleaned, not getting photos sent, not getting a certificate sent. Struggling to get an invoice for it. Well, if you've got none of these things, your insurance is invalid. You may as well have not had a clean, because in all effect, actually, if you haven't got the paperwork, you haven't had a clean. That's the way the insurance see it. I knew a friend of mine. They had two duct cleans a year. They had all the paperwork, all the photos. Luckily, they had their range service twice a year because it's a very busy site, very busy location, and the insurance still didn't pay them out. They found a way to not pay them on another little technicality somewhere. So where there's a will, there's a way for the insurance. So I'm utterly convinced that insurance will always find a way to not pay for something.
Yeah, you don't really know what your insurance company's like until you actually have a fire or a claim, and then they find out they won't actually pay up, and you think, well, I wouldn't have went with them if I'd known. And a lot of these insurance companies say we pay out on 99% of our claims. They do, but they didn't say they pay fully out. They only pay partly sometimes, so it's sort of in the wording sometimes. Yeah. Yes, insurances do come out with strange things. I think the latest one was that if you've got one that goes into a cold room or a freezer, the wiring has to be in a channel now, in a pipe. Otherwise, because the insulation in a cold store or freezer actually breaks down the plastic or the wire on the coating on the wiring, and then that can start sparking, and then it catches a fire, and then it can go up, and there's lots of fires in refrigeration units. And I had to change insurance because I couldn't do it, because mine's so tight against the ceiling you can actually get access to it unless you did it all wired around the outside and did sort of external wiring on the side. But Yeah, they do come out with some strange things, and you do have to do it. And every 5 years, you have to have your your electric tested, which you just had it done recently, and of course, PAT testing and everything else. And that's one of the good things about the quality award is that does make you do a lot of the things what you're supposed to do. It gives you a good kick on the backside and think, oh, you've got to do this. And there's loads of things like, allergen awareness and food hygiene and all the other training you give to your staff, fire wardens. Have you had your fire extinguishers checked? Lots of things which you can't even remember. I have to phone up my council every year to make sure they send me a refuse certificate to say that I've got a license. They're collecting my refuse, and also waste oil and stuff like that. And I don't usually have any pest control issues, but they said you should have them there just in case. So it shows due diligence. So I now have a pest controller putting boxes down, although I didn't think I really needed them. But there you are.
Do you often pine back to the simpler times? Like when you first got into business, this would have never been a thing. You imagine, going back to your granddad's day, even your dad and uncle's day, these things would just been like, well, what's all this about?
I know. It was so much easier. You just did the things that you needed to do. But now, it's so many more things you've got to look into. It's strange.
Yeah. One of the things that I don't even know if you think like this, but do you often just see that you are a bit of a custodian to some degree, and now you're sort of like, preparing your daughter for sort of taking over? Does she feel the pressure of being in a fourth generation business at her level?
I always thought it was going to last forever, but then you get older and you think, well, actually, I'd like to retire when I'm 40, then 50, then 60, but never did happen. And I'm thinking, financially, I could have actually retired, but you just carry on. And it came to a head about 7 years ago. The fish shop wasn't running as good as I wanted it to run. And it came to sort of a bit of a hiatus that the product wasn't as good as I think it should have been. I wasn't there as much now as you have to be in the office so much more now to do wages and everything else. So you have to do both. And it just wasn't, and I couldn't see any exit strategy from it. My daughter was a fully trained nurse, and my other one was trained to be a lecturer in media. So I thought, right, and I met a person who actually runs another fish and chip shop, and he was interested in purchasing the business as well. And we came to the conclusion that he'd run it for 2.5 years, so manage it for me, and with a profit sharing as well, and go from there. And so I had 2.5 years of contract, and so I actually went around the world with my wife, which was something which we've never done before, and it sort of took a bit back, and it made you think a bit more and things which are more important. So, but then luckily, towards the end of it, my daughter had children, and she didn't want to keep going backwards and forwards to work, and it gets very stressful. And she was, working nights sometimes, and she was the only nurse in charge with 16 patients, and if one of the patients is ill, she can look after that. But if two, what happens then? So she got quite stressed about some of them things and decided to come in the business, and so it's great. So she took over for the business, and carries on. So rather than selling the business, which I thought may have to be at one time, it's carried on, which is good. So, custodian of it and probably gone. Over the years, we've made good living from the business, and it's nice to see it carrying on and be a good thing for, my children and maybe my grandchildren.
Do you ever give it any thought, the grandchildren doing it? I know they're a bit young and you're still looking after them, but...
they're happy. They'd love to come down here.
They just want chips.
They're only 5 and 2, but yes, they'd love to come down here. I've got a friend's daughter, and she's 13, and she's wanting to work in the shop for years. And now she's 13. She's decided we got permission from the council for her to come and work, but to get past the range, you have to sort of be within 2 to 3 feet of the range. And they said, no, you're not allowed to be that close to the range as it comes, so didn't think you'd be able to work. So we got round it that if she wants to go around and wash her hands or go down to the toilet or something like that, you actually have to go outside the shop around, then come in the back door, and that's the only way we could employ her. She sort of keeps the tables clean, and we do all the salts and vinegars and stuff. But she was very happy that she could do it, so that was great.
Things like that, when I hear that council come up with these sort of silly ways around certain things, well, at least they put blocks in the way, so then you have to come around with silly ways to do these things. Just makes me think, surely you're better off just training her about the risks of the room she's in, and then that's better, surely. But I don't know, I think I'm getting a bit old and grouchy, Marcus.
Well, my mother said she left school at 13, and she went and helped on the farm with big farm machinery and stuff like that. And I remember telling the environmental health lady who came down, well, that's probably about 20 years ago, and she said her father did exactly the same. Her parents, they left school at 13 and did it. And I said, well, when did all these laws come in? And they said about 1906 or something. And that was to stop children climbing up chimneys and stuff, I think. So
yeah,
it's just from that bygone age. And even I've heard of children not allowed to do washing up because they may burn themselves in hot water. So, 13-year-old children or 14-year-old children not allowed to do washing up. And you think, well, how's that going to prepare them for life?
But it's true. Yeah, it's true. I was writing an article this morning about self-service kiosks. You know, the ones that you see at McDonald's. Well, everywhere now. Is it something you've toyed with, the idea with, of having those in?
I keep on thinking about it, and the actual shop next door, they have got them in, and they're all cashless. And we get a lot more customers come in because they want to pay with cash and don't know how to use the kiosks. So I'm sure we will go that way, but at the moment, it's probably better we don't and still do some cash and still do.
Well, you can still have the kiosks and the normal serving station, I think, couldn't you? You don't have to get rid of it. Doesn't have to be one for the other.
No, it don't have to be, but we've got click and collect, which you can do on your phone, which is very similar. You can do it in a head, but we're finding at the moment that people, especially elderly people, older people, even sort of 50s and 60s, don't like to use the kiosks. They haven't used it. I know you're going to say they use it at McDonald's and stuff like that, but
well, they probably have less choice there.
Yeah, but we're finding at the moment that we get a lot more customers coming in saying, we prefer to pay cash and talk to customers and actually talk to the server and still be able to do it. Whereas the other ones, you just print it and then you walk away. So I don't know how that works. Even with when you do, customer survey and stuff, they say, "Did you upsell?" I don't know how you upsell on a kiosk, but
no, they do it really well. They do it very well. Like, honestly, I didn't think they'd do it as well as they do. And as for talking to customers, when they bring the food over, they're very chatty. Well, I'm only using McDonald's as an example, but like yesterday, I took my mum and my dad to McDonald's, and we just sat at the table and ordered it on the app, and they brought it over. And the person who brought the food over was very chatty. How you doing? Do you need anything? And I think my dad was well surprised because he's not of that generation at all. But a few weeks ago, I think I might have told you, my dad had a serious stroke a couple of years ago. And we went out to a restaurant in Leicester together. And he still wants to pay. Like he just sees it as, yes, I'm 40 years old in May, but he's my dad. The way he sees it is, I'm your dad. I'm paying for dinner. And I was like, okay, then. I was like, oh, you can't pay anyway. I'm now thinking to myself, he doesn't know how to use Apple Pay, so we're going to get away with this. So, Dad, they don't take card, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, so he sees me get my phone out, figures out that I was going to pay with my phone. He figures out I can do this too. He literally just gets his phone out, puts it on the thing, and it goes, bing. Oh, my God, he was just like, wow, I paid. And I think technology surprises people, especially when it's frictionless. Because my dad... I think for years he was always like a cash payer, always cash in his pocket. He had a chip shop in the 80s and 90s. He was not thinking about card and stuff like that. He was just paid by cash. But then when he paid by card the other day, it actually does help disabled people massively. Because I'd imagine they struggle with cash, if I'm honest. But I think for accessibility, it was brilliant. McDonald's have really done well there. And But yeah, I guess you don't want to offend anybody nowadays. I always say you want everybody to feel like they can spend money with you. So you don't want to give anybody a reason not to. You want to give people more reasons to. And I just thought with your location, having one of those or a couple of those terminals might mean that it keeps the shop clearer inside. They just come in, do that quickly, wait until their number's called, and
I'm sure we will have that soon. We have to discuss it with my daughter, but she says she don't think the time is correct at the right time. We went into a burger bar. Oh, burger bar. Sorry, we went into a pizza place yesterday with my grandchildren, and they said you have to order it on your phone now and do the app and get it all up. And I believe that took 3 times longer than it would normally if we just order it with the waitress, because you have to find the kids' meals right at the bottom, then you get the drinks, and then you go to the next bit, and then you add salad or bottomless coat, and then you got to go to the next place to find desserts, and then you got to find the bits and pieces. It took 3 times longer than normal. And they said, and they'd only just changed over. It only changed over in the last 2 or 3 weeks, I think. But yes, it definitely took 3 times longer to order. I can see that I didn't have to have a waitress there come and take your order, but she was there anyhow and said, if you've got any problems, just let me know and we come and help you. So I think, well, it hasn't saved any stuff, really.
I think the mistake, in my opinion, and this is what I wrote in my article, actually, I think the mistake is that people do these innovations to save on staff. I think there's your mistake. Well, not your mistake, their mistake. For me, it's all about customer experience. If you can enhance the customer experience, whether it's a staff member serving them or an app, or using a terminal, I think that's the key for me. But if you're doing it just to say, oh, I'm having less staff, it doesn't make sense to me. McDonald's actually employ more people since they've taken on terminals, which is a paradox because everyone thought they'd employ less people. Whereas actually, because of all the customizations, people end up buying more, you see. So, because again, like some people are embarrassed to say, oh, can I have an extra pancake? And can I have this? And can I have that? Into a person. Whereas on an app, it's sort of faceless. You're not embarrassed. You just keep putting things on. So, yeah, you could truly make your own big Mac. There you go. Imagine that, Marcus.
Yes, that's really good. I think, yes, it will be coming. Definitely will be coming, but I don't know if we're ready for it yet. But yeah. I like the way that you can do it, but I think that, especially the people who are doing the COVID, a lot of the youngsters there, they don't like contact with other staff. They don't like talking to other people. If they can do it on an app, I like that bit. And especially, up to about 23, 24-year-olds, they'd rather do that than talk to somebody. Whereas older than that, or especially over 30s or 40s, would actually like to talk to a person rather than to talk to a robot or something like that. I went about 3 weeks ago, I went to a place in Norwich where we didn't really want ice creams, but we ordered ice creams, and this little robot came along down after, turned around and delivered the ice creams.
Wow.
And you take it out, and then they press the button and the robot goes back up there. Now, it was slow, and it had to wait till people get out of the way. But people only buying them because they wanted to see the robot come and do the job.
Yeah. No, I think in that instance, I'd want. I think that's a gimmicky thing. I think, yeah. But again, you can see why people like it because again, the numbers are supporting the fact that people are willing to pay for experiences now. So if they see that as an experience, they've ticked it off the list, I'd imagine. It probably kept the kids happy. But, kids are happy with ice cream anyway. If I took my kids anywhere for ice cream now, they don't care who's delivering it. As long as it's ice cream, they'll have it. We went to an Iranian restaurant or Persian restaurant the other day in Cardiff. No, sorry, Bristol. And my son, the youngest one's going through this really fussy phase. The only thing he'll eat is chips. Alex went through the exact same phase, exactly the same age. It's frustrating, but all he wants is chips. So he eats a few chips, and then they're like, "Oh, would you like some ice cream?" Now the ice cream was saffron ice cream, so it's amazing because he gets his ice cream and he's really happy. He puts his spoon in, and I'm just watching his face, and I'm just ready to start laughing because I'm thinking to myself, "He's not going to like this," and he puts it in, eats it, and I'm just watching him, and that pure joy just turned to horror when he realised it was horrible. And it was so funny. But he probably thought no one can ruin ice cream And he found out the other day that people can. Actually, I enjoyed it. I ate it, so it's fine. But what are we going to see moving forward then, Marcus? Anything in the near future other than celebrating the 100th at this location? Do you think there's anything in the immediate plans, or is it just more of the same? Great fish and chips.
I would really like to change the building, and I've had it all measured out and everything else. I just can't find how I want it. I'd like to have big double doors where you can have a pallet come straight through the door and be delivered to a ground floor. I'd like to be able to have potatoes be delivered on a pallet as well, so that they go straight in rather than be hand carried with the sack barrow and then put through the door and come through. It would just save so much time and it'd be so much easier. At the moment, we have cans of drinks. I know you could say we could have post mix, but it's so much easier to just take a can or take a bottle than it is to wait for people to do the post mix. But we have, 150 cases sometimes, and you have to carry them up the stairs and store them all there. I'd like it so much more easier to do. So I don't know if I ever be able to, and if I do change the layout of the shop, I'm probably going to have toilets in. And that means having a disabled toilet. So we're going to have 3 toilets, which are going to take up more space. And I don't know if that make it any greater, because you don't make any money out of toilets. I know people like coming in and they use them, but I haven't got them at the moment because it's such an old building. And it is an old building. It's three cottages, and they've all been knocked into one shop, and now you can't do anything else with it now. So it would take a lot of work, and I'd really love to be able to change it and find that way to do it, but it's never going to be perfect, and I'd like to do it. I'll probably move the range and everything else around, so that's what I'd like to do, but it took over 2 years and I still haven't got down to it. I just keep on putting it off and putting it off. So one day that'll happen, and because, I think the last really big major refit, well, we had refits or smaller refits, was in 1966, I think, when we had all the flat done then. But I'd really like to have it all done again, but talking to planners and getting through the planning permission stuff is so much harder nowadays. And but that'd be my thing. As for it's like ice cream. Everybody used to go there. Used to get an ice cream or scoop an ice cream. Now you go there, it takes 3 times longer to serve, because do you want sprinkles on it? Do you want little gummy bears on it? Do you want this on it? Do you want sauces on it? And it takes. Just explain a bit what they want. Even little ice cream vans now, they have all of them all around the sides, and you're thinking, wow, dip there and then this and this, and you think it takes so much time. It's getting personalised to your likings, and people will come back, I suppose. It's a bit like, you always said about fish cakes as well. If you make your own products, nobody else can do that, so they all have to come to you because that's the only place they can get them from. So perhaps that's the way forward, is personalising it so that you make things that nobody else can make, and say fish cakes, or I don't know, perhaps at Wells here we've got crabs and lobsters and cockles and whelks. I don't know what you could do with whelks. I suppose
whelks are just great as they are. They're just great as they are, aren't they? Like,
I don't know if you could put them in batter though, could you?
I'm sure there's something you could do. They'd be a bit tough because you'd be cooking them again, I guess. But yeah, maybe just like alpha coated or something. You could do something. There's a will, there's a way. Like, you've only got to look at the Asians that do absolutely everything with all seafood. So yeah, there's a way. It's just that the British, at the same time as being adventurous and they want more choice, are actually very prudish as well. At the same time, they're not overly adventurous. So you're almost stuck between a rock and a hard place, because I think we've got a very set preconception of what we like in the UK. Whereas if you look at the Japanese, the Chinese, the Koreans, they'll do pretty much anything and eat pretty much anything, whereas we wouldn't in the UK. So I think the sky's the limit with anything. It's just whether people will eat it.
I tried somebody came back from Italy the other day, and they had a pancake. No, not pancake. I had a pizza, and it was fresh dough, and then they put cheese inside and basil and stuff there, and then fold it on top, and then deep fried it. I can't remember what it's.
So a fried calzone, I guess.
It's come from this place in Italy. It's been doing it for hundreds of years, and I did try that, and I liked it. And they said they do it out there, but it's not for us, but that tasted nice, and I did try it.
I do deep fried pizza in Scotland, so
we did them before, but this is actually homemade dough or boiling dough, whatever, and then stretch then leave, and then come back, and then you put the actual 3 different cheeses or 2 cheeses in, and fresh basil in it. Fold it all around, so it looks more like a Cornish pasty, really.
Okay, so it's a fried calzone, I'd imagine. Yeah. Okay.
It did taste quite nice, and I thought, well, it could be a way, but we're getting a new pizza shop not far away from now, so I don't suppose that people can do it. So I don't know.
Well, Matt Bedford will listen to that because he's the street food king now. Have you not seen? Matt Bedford's the street food king, so he's going to listen to that, and I bet you he's going to nick that idea. So he's going to get,
it's the chicken wings at the moment.
Yeah, but he'll even come with his trailer to Wells, and you won't be able to get rid of him. Well, look, Marcus, it's been absolutely great talking to you, and thank you for your time today. And thank you for being a good friend, a good supporter in the business over the years, and also a listener. So thank you for all of those things.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. And thanks for having me on. I don't know if it'll be any interest, but hopefully someone will get some inspiration somewhere, perhaps.
Let's hope so. Have a great day.
All right. Thanks, Sal.
I really enjoyed chatting to Marcus French on today's episode. In my opinion, he's one of the best. He's an absolute gentleman. It's amazing to hear his story and about his business and the history with his family. Also, like, if you're in the area, if you're near Wales next to the sea and it's a nice day, just pop in and say hello and have some great fish and chips. If you want to keep in the loop with what we're doing at Ceres, then you should be following us on social media. But to get the information delivered to your inbox, then you must be on our mailing list. And also, that's where the special offers go to as well. The link will be in the episode show notes. Be sure to share this podcast with your friends and on social media. If you like this episode, then chances are others in the industry will like it too. And if you have a moment, do us a favour and leave us a review on your podcast channel. Thank you.